And
Okay,
welcome back
there we
to another episode of Brilliantly Resilient Live. We are already having a great time before you all got to tune in to us. This is Kristen Smedley, and I'm here with my buddy Mary Fran Bontempo. And we are here with a guest that, like I said, we already are talking and having a good time. And I knew that he was going to be, I knew he was going to be great from the email that he sent. And I sent you all in the Facebook group the teasers that he sent to us that he wanted to talk about. Already was loving that. Then I knew we were going to have a good time, because then I sent William all the stuff about how we're going on Zoom and all this stuff. Never told the exact time that we were going to do any of this. He goes, great. Every email back to me when I was a lunatic, he goes, I can't wait. This is great. And then I will say, we always have a first on this show. William's the first guest that we had to say, I'm sorry, can we even change the time again? Because the Blue Angels are flying over Philadelphia, and it's going to be right at the time that we were going to be talking. And he's like, cool, I could do an earlier time. So, and he's our fanciest guest. We love all of our previous guests. You all are wonderful and brilliant, but people that
look at this background. Come on.
Look at the background.
Come on. We're over here with our signs, which we thought was way cool, and now look at this.
And we've got the Bold Firm there.
So I get the email that the Blue Angels are coming to town, and I'm thinking, so why don't we just cancel the meeting and we can just watch the Blue Angels, right?
No, we don't do that.
Cancel. We don't cancel. Nope. We just move you early and make you on your toes. And we pull Mary Fran out from spraying her pots in her backyard. And I was running on the trails. I was sprinting to get home. So it's all
I just did the worst spray paint job on some flower pots ever, but that's a whole different story. So William, welcome. We can't wait to dive into your stuff. You had some really cool things that we wanted to talk about. So first of all, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody and tell us a little bit about, when we try to do the show, we talk about the reset, the rise, and the reveal of your brilliance. So just lead us into your story and let's get into this.
Well, my company is the Bold Firm. And what I do is I help business owners and employers address specific issues inside their organization. So those issues could be workplace conflict, it could be morale boosting, it could be addressing high turnover. I do some sales training and some management training, but the ultimate purpose is to help each member of that organization kind of find out where they fit in and how they bring value to that organization.
So you're doing our tribe speech here with business stuff.
Definitely. Yeah. And really helping people understand that they bring a unique purpose and a unique value to the team that they're a part of. I think that especially in this pandemic, jobs that seem so trivial, so meaningless, they've become the rock stars of this whole season of panic and chaos. They're the ones who are kind of keeping things afloat. So being able to recognize that, whether you're in the midst of a crisis or not, is vital to your ability to contribute to the overall team.
Yeah, I find that point of view so interesting, because I feel like we're always talking at people saying, the other people on your team have value. The other people on your team have value. And I don't often or rarely ever hear the other conversation, you have value, like making sure that you remember you have value instead of convincing everybody else. I like that. I like that point of view a lot. And you're right. I have 2 teenagers and a 20-year-old, and I have had so many conversations with them now about this huge lesson they're learning. Every person's role in the world is important. Different times it might be called upon, but everybody's role is important.
Yeah, and that's vital. And it's one thing when you don't hear it from the outside. No one's telling you that. Mm-hmm. But I think what's more important is that you recognize that in yourself. We're always looking for outside, external things that tell us the situation or explain to us our reference points. There has to be something on the inside that says, I bring something special to the table. And if I don't show up, the overall team suffers.
Yeah. Well, and that's the whole concept. I think we've learned, very much to your point, we have learned in this moment in time that this big thing that we have, this society, has a lot of moving parts and pieces.
Yes.
And we don't always recognize those things that kind of fly under our radar. But
Yeah.
boy, when they don't work, nothing works.
Yeah.
So it's true, like all those people, they probably thought I was crazy, but the sanitation guys came by last week and they were picking up trash, and I literally ran into my driveway and I was like making heart signs. I'm like, thank you for going to work. Thank you for
Exactly.
doing your job. You know,
Exactly.
because can you imagine if they didn't? So
Yeah.
I think you're right. Every company has to recognize that every person there, and you have to see it for yourself, has a part to play.
Yeah.
You know, just speaking of that, you know, here I'm in the Panhandle of Texas, and you know, we have a few restaurants, fast food restaurants, where they employ a lot of their employees have mental disabilities, and so you know, the initial thought is, you know, they don't have a lot to contribute, they don't have a lot to bring to the table, and it's seen more as a charity.
Mm-hmm.
But when you go to this restaurant or some of these restaurants, you begin to experience this, and these people show up on time, they're ready to work, they're humble, they're gracious, they're polite, they're courteous, and they bring an element of dignity to even a fast food restaurant, the level of service. And so the reality of it is, even people with different abilities, they bring something special to the table, and it can't be neglected. It cannot be overlooked.
You know
It's
what?
something to be valued and cherished.
To that point, I have two blind sons, and in the blind
Mhm.
community, there's a 70% unemployment rate. And oddly enough, a friend of mine and I started working on a TEDx talk about
Mhm.
everyone's trying to fix that unemployment rate and do all of this yelling at people, forcing them to hire, all that. And I was like, what if we turned it around and said, here's the thing. What I've learned in knowing so many successful blind adults is they have skills that you would dream that your teammates would have. They've been
Yes.
managing teams of teachers since my kids were in third grade. They started getting
Yeah.
on their education plan teams. They have all these skills that they've been practicing for a long time. So we're kind of turning around to say, it's a shame if you don't have blind people working on your team because of the skills they bring. But interestingly enough, we started planning that. Then all of this happened with the pandemic, right? And so many
Yeah.
people out of work, so many people unemployed, and now everybody's crying, like freaking out about the unemployment rate with the sighted community. And I'm like, hey, this is where we have been. How can this be something that merges together? Look at everybody's value now.
And so, and to speak to that, you know, we're talking about broken situations and that presenting an advantage.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I watched your TED Talk, and you know, I can only imagine that initial feeling of my son is in this condition. Like, what am I supposed to do now?
Mm-hmm.
But fast forward 10, 15 years, that one situation that seemed bad is bringing so much incredible value to a world that's in panic mode.
Yeah.
And so not only are you presenting this resilience, this spirit of resilience, but it's not something that you read in a book. You didn't take a course, you experienced this. And so this pandemic, it presents challenges. I'm willing to step out on the limb and say, you know what? You don't feel like this is the end of the world. Like, it's bad, but
Yeah.
listen, guys, we can definitely get through this. I've seen some things, we can get through this. And that puts you in a totally different advantage as someone who hasn't experienced something that could be considered so traumatic.
Yes.
And so it's the same thing, you know, helping a child through addiction. You know, you go through that season, you're thinking, you know, is this ever going to end? But in the midst of that, you discover that, you know what, that was hard, but I got through that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's something about the human spirit that's so resilient. You know,
Yeah.
one sperm out of a billion was able to impregnate an egg, and here you are. You know, our very nature was created for resilience. Our very nature was created to thrive in the midst of difficult circumstances.
Yeah.
That's who we are. That's what we do as humans. So
Yeah.
you can do a lot of things with your human spirit. You can depress it, you can oppress it, you can discourage it, you can cause it to feel anxiety. in doubt, but you can never destroy it. The human spirit is indestructible. And that's one of the things as we're going through this pandemic, we have to realize it is a challenging time. It's a hard thing that we're dealing with. But the reality of it is, and I can't speak for everyone. I know there's some people that's going through some really traumatic times right now. But when I went to bed last night, I had a wife and 3 sons that were healthy, sleeping in the bed, that was fully fed. And when I woke up this morning, I had those same children and that same wife. And I take it a step further, my coffee pot worked. You know what?
Jesus.
Praise the Lord.
Yeah, exactly.
Praise
I mean,
Jesus.
I count it as my blessing every morning when I stand there and I'm like, sweet God, thank you that the thing works again.
yeah, hey, you know what?
I pray at least twice a year.
I may not be employed. I may be on furlough. You know, I may be struggling financially. But listen, guys, at the end of the day, for the most part, we're fed, we're healthy.
Yeah.
The lights came on when I flicked the switch and the toilet flushed. We're going to get through this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to go and ask you what caused you to kind of create this? Did you have any kind of a personal challenge that you kind of overcame that led you to this? That's number one. And
Okay.
number two, I want to circle back to that word dignity that you used, because that is so important. So jump in on either one of those and just,
Definitely. So my personal journey is in 2013. I'm from Amarillo, Texas, which is in the Panhandle, right?
Mhm.
I moved from Amarillo, Texas into what we call the Permian Basin. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with the oil and gas industry, but it's one of the largest oil shales on the planet that's been discovered. So I moved to the Midland, Odessa area 2013 in the middle of an oil boom.
Mhm.
And so I moved into what I later discovered was complete chaos. If you've ever been around the oil and gas, it's so volatile and you feel it in every aspect of life. Just to give you an example, you know, you would go to a restaurant and you would have a 1 or 2 hour wait. And we're talking about you're going to a Chick-fil-A, right? You're not going to a high-end restaurant. You're going to a fast food restaurant. What happens during the boom is a lot of industries are staggered because everyone's moving into the oil fields for the money.
right.
And so
right.
it just really decimates an economy. And so I'm living through this. I have a wife and I have, at the time, 2 children, and I'm driving. I have a 2-hour commute back and forth. And I'm waking up at about 4:30 in the morning, and I'm getting back into bed about 12:30, 1 o'clock, 11 o'clock at times. And so I'm living this life for 3 years. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I never knew I could function under so much stress and pressure.
Can't even imagine. Just the commute alone. Good Lord.
Yeah, it was a really crazy time. And just, it was so crazy because everything was so volatile. And the only way I can explain it, imagine a small city where you're from. You know, I use the example of Hereford, Texas, which is the beef capital of the world, right? I think the population is maybe a few thousand. You're taking a city the size of Hereford and you're cramming the size of Dallas into it, or Houston into it.
Wow.
And so the infrastructure can't support it. There's just a lot of things that fall between the cracks.
Yeah.
And you're having to live out this day in and day out. So there's an emotional drain, there's a physical drain, there's a mental strain that you experience from day in and day out.
So what ended up happening to make you, I'm assuming you left that because, talk about a pressure cooker.
Yeah, I did. But what happened was we moved there in 2013, in the summer of 2013. My dad actually passed away that fall in 2013. We have a child. I have a 14-year-old, I have a 12-year-old, and then we now have a 5-year-old. So with all these different elements involved, you know, I thought I was at my wit's end.
Hmm.
You know, I thought, you know, how
I've
much
been
more
there.
right?
Have you been there, Kristen? I've been there.
1, 2,
That-
3,
Right? How many? Let's see how many times we
Exactly.
at our wits' end.
Exactly. But what happens each time you go there, there's a new watermark, and you realize that, you know what, I thought I couldn't handle anymore.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's what began to happen. You know, certain things began to transpire. And not only that, this hour, I would drive an hour and 15 minutes to work, and then an hour and 15 minutes home. I was living in a small town by the name of Big Spring at the time. And we had been there for probably about a month. And across the street, there was a young couple that moved in. And, you know, I actually left for work a little later that day. I think I left there about 10 o'clock in the morning. Didn't have to be at work till 11:30. I remember watching this couple move in, and I'm thinking, wow, that's cute. That's nice. I come back home that day, and it was actually one of my short days. I get home probably about 7:30, 8 o'clock, and the entire house is taped off with caution tape, with the yellow police tape. And I'm
What?
thinking, what the heck is going on? You know, what's going on here? So I get home, and I'm like, what the heck happened? I'm talking to my wife. Come to find out, that couple that moved in that day, the boyfriend had shot the girlfriend at close range in the back of the head in front of their daughter.
Oh
Right?
my God.
So I'm finding out that this is just this small town. This is what happens in this small town. So
Wow.
you know, there's just certain things that happened during that period in my life where I realized, you know what, I thought I couldn't handle anymore. But things continued to pile up, and we continued to make it through. And I realized this thing called resilience, that, you know what, we're created for so much more than what we're actually experiencing, and we can handle so much more.
Yeah.
You moved
So-
off that street though, right?
Well, I moved away from there, yes. But this
William,
was
get a new
Some bad
town.
mojo
well,
over
well,
there.
hold on. This is
God.
the thing. So I did some research after that happened, and so Big Spring, Paul Harvey one time had did it. He was doing, obviously he had a radio show, but he had did a segment on Big Spring, and he said, if you ever want to commit a murder, this is where you go and do it, right?
What? Put
yeah.
that on the welcome
God.
sign.
If you ever do some research about Big Spring, you'll find out it's a really crazy place. It's a small, crazy
God.
place. I think at the time, I think they had like 4 or 5 prisons, actually, private prisons.
Holy
And state
cow.
prisons. It's just they have a mental hospital. It's just
Wow.
the whole ordeal was just an experience in itself, right?
Wow.
All of our listeners that are mad that their town hasn't put in a right turning lane.
Yeah, hey, it's not that bad, right?
It's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
Perspective, people. Oh my gosh.
Oh my
heart.
gosh.
Okay, continue. We're out of that town though, right?
Yeah, 2015 though, we get pregnant. We have a son. We have another son. I have 3 boys, and so this little guy comes along, and I'm thinking, wow, we have a baby, and I'm so excited. And we bring him home from the hospital, and about a day or 2 into it, this little guy has blood in his stool. And we can't figure out for the life of me what the heck is going on. So we're feeding him, we're changing him, we're taking care of him. Come to find out, he has a severe allergy. And so my entire life, I always made fun of people with allergies. Like, if you had a peanut allergy, it's the funniest thing to me.
Doesn't God have a way of smacking you in the back of the head?
He does.
Doesn't
He
he?
does.
Like, just like, all right, here you go. Whack.
Exactly.
How funny is
this
that?
little guy, he can't have milk, he can't have dairy, he can't have dairy, he can't have tree nuts, peanuts, he can't have wheat, he can't have eggs, he can't have anything. And my wife is breastfeeding at the time, so he can't have it, she can't have it. Long story short, it's so much of a struggle just trying to keep this kid fed.
Yeah.
You know, he can't have meat. All he can have is veggies.
And doesn't that break down, you know, we were just talking jokingly about people who kind of look for reasons to be upset. doesn't stuff like that just break it down to its most elemental? Your
Yes.
child can't eat the
Yes.
way other people can eat. So
Yeah.
I know one of Kristen's things is always talking about that, like that tweaking of the perspective.
Yes.
And you clearly, every time you had, you know, one of these experiences, it was like a major reset in your perspective.
Definitely. Definitely.
Wow.
And so it just really, you know, there were some other things that happened during that time, and it really kind of helped me put some things in perspective. And one of the things it taught me to do was to breathe.
Mm.
You know.
Yeah.
You know.
That's something we get, that's a big, you know, I tell this story when I was going through the worst of everything with my son.
Yeah.
There were multiple times in the middle of the night that I would wake up like gasping and realize that I had been holding my breath in my sleep. Like it was that bad that I was holding my breath in my sleep. And it really, you know, when we can break down these things that happen to us into the most fundamental, and just like you said a few moments ago, you, before you went to bed last night, you had these 3 beautiful boys and your wife and your roof over your head and all.
Yeah.
The next morning you had the same thing. And I think that's one of the lessons here is like, find that baseline to be grateful for every day.
Yeah.
And it's there, man. It's all around us. You cannot be in this situation right now with the pandemic and all this happening, and say, you know what, all is lost. Because the reality of it is, although times are challenging, we haven't lost anything. You may have lost a loved one, you know, you may have lost a source of income, you may have lost some things that you counted dear. But at the end of the day, if you can take a deep breath, you're gonna be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You make it.
That's like
Yeah.
that song that we were on Sundays we dedicate the show to faith, and this new song came out, and it's a song that's like a prayer about everything that he's grateful for, and the whole thing is alive and breathing. Like
Yeah.
if very basic, if you can't think of anything else, especially right now, if you can take a deep breath,
Yeah.
because this is the disease that messes that up, then that's at least a thing to be grateful for. And then you start from there in the rise. You have one thing to be grateful for, and then you come up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really that simple. Life is, we like to complicate life and make it this huge complex scenario. But if you can take a deep breath, you know what, chances are you're gonna make it through.
You're ahead of the game.
I'm the queen of complicating things. I'll be like, now we're gonna do this, now we're gonna do this, and she goes like this. No, we're not doing it.
I said, she's got a million ideas, and I'm like, I get real close to the camera. No, we're not doing that.
We're not gonna do it.
Keep it simple. That's what
We're not doing that.
It's true though. You focus on those key things.
Yeah.
And then you can go from there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to circle back to that whole idea again, and maybe I just want to underline the point that you made about everyone having dignity. This whole thing has leveled that playing field. Recognize the dignity in every person, and then it's probably easier to see their contributions, right?
Definitely. You know what? You cannot look at a human and deny their awesomeness.
Mm-hmm.
It's impossible. It's impossible to look at a human, regardless of where they're at, and just deny that they possess something that's incredible. The fact that they can breathe air, you know. I don't believe in rewarding people simply because they breathe air, right? We live in a society sometimes that think, well, I breathe air, I deserve it.
Everybody gets a trophy. You get a trophy. You get a trophy.
Exactly. And I don't believe in that. But fundamentally, you know what? If you breathe air, there is something about you that you bring to the table, or else you wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about dignity. You have to find what you do well. And we all do something well.
Mhm.
We can complain well. We can sing well. We may be able to clean a mean toilet. Maybe we can cook a great dish. We all bring something to the table.
Mhm.
I give you an example. I have the innate ability to take a complex situation and break it down and put it in the simplest form where a person can understand it and effectively follow steps to bring out a certain result or outcome.
Wow.
Yeah.
Your smile could be your superpower.
Mhm.
Yeah.
My wife, I can see my wife smile, and all of a sudden, everything in the world is going to be okay.
Yeah.
She doesn't have to say
Well,
a word.
that's the part that we talk about with people's brilliance. And I think it's an important point to note right here that your brilliance doesn't have to be brilliant. Like
Yeah.
it can be whatever that gift is. And it can be as simple as that. It can be as simple as, when people see you and you smile and you look at them and you speak to them, there's something about you that's a calming presence. Like
Yes.
the
Yes.
brilliance doesn't have to be this genius thing that you have. It's your
Right.
gift, whatever that happens to be.
Yeah.
So
It's so
yeah,
true.
Yeah. I was one time in a group doing the book Purpose Driven Life by Rick
Yeah.
Warren.
Mhm.
And in the group that was in the book group, there was a woman that said, and I'm in there was like, I've got these big dreams, talking about all this stuff. And this woman was like, I don't know, I just feel like my life isn't that purposeful. All I am is, she was like an MRI tech or whatever. She's like, I don't feel like that's really impacting people's lives. And I had just been out of the beginning of the journey with my son where he had all these tests where they thought it was a brain tumor that he had. And it turns out I'm like, it's just blindness, people. We're okay. It's not a brain tumor. But the night that he had to have that MRI to either confirm or eliminate that as his option, I didn't think I would make it through the night. It was so stressful. And I said to this woman, it wasn't her that was the tech, but I said, that MRI tech was like my lifeline to be able, just the way that she was about just doing her job. And she's like, I see a lot of this. And she just was so kind. And this woman I was talking to was very kind. I said, you have no idea how many people you have walked through a dark time in their lives. So don't think that running that machine has no value and no purpose. That's huge. And then she was like, I have this whole new look about my job. I'm like, it's important.
it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's value.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
So I mean, I hate to start to wind us up, but I think we got to start to wind up. We probably could have talked for a whole lot longer. So let's just, before we do that though,
Mhm.
can you give two things? Can you give people a couple of nuggets of your wisdom to carry through, and then tell us where we can find you?
Sure. So the most important thing that we all have to realize, and we have to believe like we believe that the sun will rise tomorrow, right? Or whatever the case may be. We have to believe in two things. Number one, I may not fully understand how or why, but I am valuable. Number one, you have to realize that. And you have to really believe that. You may not understand all the nuances that make you that way, but you have to understand that you are valuable. The second, equally important thing is a realization that not only are you valuable, but you create value. And what that means is you bring something to the table.
Mm.
You bring something with you. And if you don't bring it, we all suffer. If
So
you don't,
we should consider that a responsibility.
exactly.
Wow.
One of the things I oftentimes tell people is, we attach so many feelings to things that happen in life
Mm-hmm.
because we think we're special, right? When someone cuts you off, you automatically think that jerk, right?
He doesn't know how special I am.
Right? Well, the funny is that person's a jerk. But what we're really saying is he doesn't recognize who I am.
Yeah.
And so we have this reverse way of thinking or perspective where we only think of ourselves in the most negative sense. Like we're only valuable when we're being hurt, right? But we have to recognize that, listen, number one, life happens to everyone, right? I play a role. I bring something to the table, and my responsibility is to maximize whatever I bring.
Hmm.
So if all
I
I
like
have
that.
is a 1-2 smile, then my responsibility is to bring that 1-2 smile to the world and present it like no one else has ever presented a 1-2 smile.
I
I
love
love that.
It
Awesome.
doesn't have to be deep. It doesn't have to be intellectual, but we have to be able to recognize it and understand that's our responsibility. Like one day, I feel like one day we'll give an account for that. You know, we'll give
You know
we'll
what?
give
I love that. You're exactly right. It doesn't matter how small. Like don't necessarily beat yourself up if you're not curing cancer or whatever. You have something, and just keep delivering it. Whatever it is, keep delivering it because it means something to someone in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It means something to all of us. Everyone
Yeah.
who will come in contact with you.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so where can we find you?
You can find me at theboldfirm.com.
Okay.
You can find me on Facebook at The Bold Firm. You can find me on Twitter, The Bold Firm 20, or at The Bold Firm 20. And then, of course, you can find me on YouTube as well, under The Bold Firm.
Awesome. Well, William, thank you so much for joining us today. This was a great conversation. We want people to be bold, but sometimes, I think maybe they feel like just exactly what you said. If they're not bold, they don't have a place in this. And you brought us right down to that grounded place where everybody has a place. So thank you for that.
Definitely.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I appreciate that bold. Sometimes people think I don't have the energy to be bold. That's too big for me. And you've done it. You're making me rethink the word bold.
I have an acronym for the word bold.
Oh, what is it?
It's brokenness overcome leads to destiny.
Oh,
Say that again.
Brokenness overcome, or overcame rather,
Mhm.
leads to destiny.
Brokenness overcome leads to destiny.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
And that's the gist of it. If you can overcome, whatever challenges you face, if you can overcome that, that will somehow begin to direct your path into what you should be doing or what you're capable of doing.
That's
That's
awesome. I'm
That's
scribbling it down as
It goes
you.
right in with our tagline of we want to help everybody to get through stuff and be brilliant, not broken.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
awesome. Thanks so much for joining us today, William, and for being so flexible with our crazy schedule and things doesn't that sound like the funniest excuse? Yeah, I'm sorry. We can't see you at 1:30 because we've got Blue Angels flying overhead.
But it's true.
It's true. I had somebody one time that I had to interview, a blind person, and he said, Kristen, I can't do that interview next week. I'm going to be kayaking the longest river in Africa. And I go, I've heard that excuse so many times. It's so old. On that note,
Oh
people,
my goodness.
thanks so much for joining us, William. Thank you, everybody that tuned in and is listening on the recording. And we will see you all again on Brilliantly Resilient Live. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.